Before he was the architect of Saudi Arabia's social revolution, Mohammed bin Salman was a 29-year-old defense minister directing a war from a command room. Here, in 2015, the prince leans over maps and briefings that would define his early image: bold, forceful, and unafraid of risk. Within hours of those decisions, Saudi and Gulf warplanes were pounding targets in Yemen. The campaign, launched to push back Iran-aligned Houthi forces, would drag on for years and draw international condemnation over civilian casualties. On the ground in Sana'a, the cost was visible in shattered buildings, mangled cars, and bodies pulled from the rubble. For many critics, Yemen became the first warning sign that Mohammed bin Salman's rapid rise carried a heavy human price. Yet even as Yemen burned, Washington still saw the young prince as a vital partner. In 2015, he was welcomed at the White House, part of a leadership team that shared U.S. concerns over Iran, regional instability, and the future of energy.
Share a concern about Yemen and the need to restore a functioning government that is inclusive and that can relieve the humanitarian situation there.
A year later, the prince shifted gears at home. Under the glossy Vision 2030 logo, he unveiled an ambition no Saudi leader had dared: to end the kingdom's dependence on oil and transform it into a global investment powerhouse.
نتكلم احنا عن الايرادات الغير نفطيه بنصل الى ما يزيد على 600 مليار ريال، 500 مليار ريال او اكثر في 2020. 2030 سوف نصل الى تريليون ريال سعودي. جزء منها من الاستثمار، تنويع الاستثمار، الدخول في فرص جديدة، جزء منها من استغلال الأصول غير مستغلة حاليا وسوف تحقق عوائد بعد ال5 سنوات الأولى.
Saudi Aramco's sprawling oil facilities still underpinned the state, but the message was clear: the era of simply pumping crude was no longer enough for a young, restless population. In Washington, U.S. officials courted the ambitious prince, seeing in him a partner who could modernize a conservative monarchy while keeping it aligned with U.S. interests. Inside the royal family, though, change came abruptly. Mohammed bin Nayef, a powerful interior minister long seen as the kingdom's main counterterrorism ally, was quietly sidelined. Saudi TV broke the news in 2017. King Salman had removed his nephew as crown prince and elevated his son Mohammed, giving the 31-year-old sweeping powers as heir, deputy prime minister and defense minister.
ومن منصب نائب رئيس مجلس الوزراء ومنصب وزير الداخلية. اختيار صاحب السمو الملكي الأمير محمد بن سلمان بن عبد العزيز آل سعود وليا للعهد وتعيينه نائبا لرئيس مجلس الوزراء مع استمراره وزيرا للدفاع واستمراره فيما كلف به من مهام أخرى.
Soon, Mohammed bin Salman's image was everywhere, on parade grounds, reviewing troops ahead of the Hajj pilgrimage, presenting himself as a warrior prince guarding the holy sites and leading a new generation of Saudis into a different future. That future took a darker turn in November 2017. In a shock move, hundreds of princes, businessmen, and ministers were summoned to Riyadh's Ritz Carlton hotel and locked inside. The crown prince called it an anti-corruption purge. Critics called it a shakedown that dismantled rival power centers and concentrated unprecedented authority in his hands.
But if you look in terms of dollars, $3 billion, $533 million, $525 million, that's peanuts for you. Should have increased it. We really have a great friendship, a great relationship. I would really have to say the relationship was, to put it mildly, very, very strained during the Obama administration. And the relationship now is probably as good as it's really ever been.
Thank you, Mr. President. Actually, the relation between Saudi Arabia and the rest of America, it's an old relation. We are the oldest ally for the rest of America and the Middle East. Right. More than 80 years of alliance and big interest, politically, economically, and security, in different area and a lot of area. And the foundation of the relation, it's really huge and really deep in different issue. We know that today the relation, it's the cause of more than 4 million jobs in the rest of America, directly and non-directly. Also, it's a cause for a lot of jobs in Saudi Arabia, directly and non-directly.
At home, his reforms were reshaping daily life. In 2018, Saudi women took the wheel for the first time, ending the world's last ban on female drivers. It was the most visible symbol of a broader social revolution, women working, mingling more freely with men, and stepping into spaces once controlled by a hardline religious establishment. But just as he was being celebrated abroad as a reformer, one of his country's most prominent critics was speaking out in London. Jamal Khashoggi warned that, despite the crackdown on dissent, the Palestinian issue still burned in Saudi hearts.
the Palestinian question, it is still a touchy issue in Saudi Arabia. Even though the government is totally in control with people in jails and silencing the dissent voices, clergies, but it is a burning topic.
Days later, CCTV in Istanbul captured Khashoggi walking into the Saudi consulate. He never walked out. Turkish investigators said he was killed and dismembered inside by a Saudi hit team. US intelligence later concluded that the operation was approved by the Crown Prince, who denied ordering it but accepted responsibility as de facto ruler. Then US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo flew to Riyadh to demand answers. Behind closed doors, Washington and Riyadh tried to contain a crisis that threatened to upend a cornerstone of US Middle East policy. The King and Crown Prince appeared with Khashoggi's son in a televised condolence ritual, a stark image of power and vulnerability after a murder that shocked the world.
الحادث اللي حدث مؤلم جدا لجميع السعوديين، خاصة لأنا مواطن سعودي، وأعتقد أنه مؤلم لأي إنسان موجود في العالم. هو حادث بشع غير مبرر تماما. اليوم المملكة العربية السعودية تقوم باتخاذ كل الإجراءات القانونية للتحقيق واكتمال التحقيقات بالعمل مع الحكومة التركية للوصول لنتائج وتقديم المذنبين للمحاكمة وأخذ العقاب الرادع. أبغى أختم فقط في حاجة إنه دولة الرئيس سعد جالس يومين في السعودية، فأرجو ما تطلع إشاعات إنه مخطوف. في كامل حريتي.
The remarks were met with skepticism from rights groups, who said the true architects of the operation would never face justice. The laughter on stage did little to ease Western unease over his methods. On his first trip abroad after Khashoggi's killing, Mohammed bin Salman was embraced by Egypt's President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi in Cairo, a reminder that, for many authoritarian allies, strategic interests outranked human rights concerns. In Tunis, however, protesters flooded the streets, waving signs reading "Not Welcome" and denouncing his visit in Khashoggi's name. At the G20 in Buenos Aires, Russian President Vladimir Putin greeted him with an enthusiastic high-five, the two men laughing as cameras flashed, a striking image of defiance as Western leaders wrestled with how to handle the Crown Prince. In the photo, the Crown Prince stood at the edge of the group, seemingly sidelined, a visual reminder that Khashoggi's killing had made him a pariah in some Western capitals, even as others continued to engage. China, by contrast, rolled out the red carpet in Beijing. President Xi Jinping and Mohammed bin Salman met for high-level talks, deepening an energy, trade, and investment partnership that would later help broker an unexpected Saudi-Iran rapprochement. By mid-2019, the prince was back center stage at another G20, this time in Osaka, standing near Trump, Erdogan, and Xi, his isolation giving way to a carefully managed return. In early 2021, he hugged Qatar's emir on the tarmac in Alula, sealing an end to a bitter Gulf rift and signaling a new pragmatism in his regional diplomacy. Even his brief hospital stay for appendicitis was televised, another reminder that his image is tightly choreographed and ever-present in Saudi public life. On Saudi TV, he talked openly about selling a slice of Aramco to a major global energy company, pitching a kingdom that could monetize its oil giant while investing in new industries and technologies.
في الدولة أو الشركة اللي موجودة في الدولة المعينة، ما أقدر أذكر اسمها، لكن دولة ضخمة جدا. إذا حصلت على 1% سوف تعزز صناعات أرامكو في السعودية وسوف تعزز الطلب على منتجات أرامكو في الدولة أيضا للشركة اللي اشترت فيها 1%.
As King Salman's health visibly weakened, the son stepped further into the spotlight, traveling to Ankara in 2022 to repair ties with Turkey, whose president had once publicly accused Saudi officials in Khashoggi's killing. In Jeddah, a carefully watched fist bump with US President Joe Biden symbolized Washington's reluctant reset. Biden had vowed to make Saudi Arabia a pariah, but soaring energy prices and regional security brought the two men together. European leaders, from France's Emmanuel Macron to EU officials in Brussels, also courted the Crown Prince, seeking influence over energy flows, arms deals, and regional diplomacy. At home, King Salman named him Prime Minister, formalizing what the world already knew: Mohammed bin Salman was now firmly in charge. By 2023, Saudi envoys were in Sana'a, exploring a path to end the war in Yemen, a conflict the prince had once escalated and was now trying to wind down as part of a broader push to recast himself as a broker of peace. In Jeddah, he met Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, offering mediation with Moscow and hosting talks aimed at shaping post-war security. At the Arab League summit, he welcomed Syria's Bashar al-Assad back into the fold, reversing years of isolation and underscoring his role as the region's new power broker. In Beijing, Saudi and Iranian officials signed a China-brokered deal to restore diplomatic ties, another sign that Mohammed bin Salman was rewriting the kingdom's regional playbook.
روابط با رژیم صهیونیستی از سوی کشورهای منطقه این خنجری است از پشت بر مردم فلسطین و به مقاومت فلسطینیان.
Days later at the UN, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu declared that the world was on the cusp of a historic peace between Israel and Saudi Arabia, a deal that could reshape the Middle East.
To our region, to the entire world. There's no question. The Abraham Accords heralded the dawn of a new age of peace. But I believe that we are at the cusp of an even more dramatic breakthrough, an historic peace between Israel and Saudi Arabia, a great blessing that I could see on the horizon.
Until war erupted in Gaza. Hamas's 7th of October attacks on southern Israel and Israel's devastating response in Gaza froze normalization and forced the Crown Prince to recalibrate. At Islamic and Arab summits in Riyadh, he condemned what he called Israeli genocide and pushed for a ceasefire, striving to balance Saudi interests, public anger, and relations with Washington. At the same time, he pressed ahead with a different kind of global influence: sports and spectacle. Saudi investment flooded into football, golf, and Formula One. The kingdom emerged as favorite to host the 2034 World Cup, and Riyadh secured Expo 2030, victories hailed at home as proof that a once-guarded country had become a magnet for attention.
The 2034 World Cup is our invitation to the world to witness Saudi Arabia's development, experience its welcoming society, culture and heritage, and become part of its history.
US Secretary of State Antony Blinken, EU leaders, and Iran's foreign minister all lined up in Riyadh in 2024, seeking influence and reassurance as the Gaza war, Iran tensions, and shifting alliances reshaped the region. The Crown Prince used each visit to stress that Saudi Arabia would not recognize Israel without a Palestinian state, and to present himself as the indispensable mediator.
ولن تتوقف المملكة عن عملها الدؤوب في سبيل قيام دولة فلسطينية مستقلة وعاصمتها القدس الشرقية، ونؤكد أن المملكة لن تقيم علاقات دبلوماسية مع إسرائيل دون ذلك.
By late 2024, Mohammed bin Salman was front and center at the first EU Gulf Summit in Brussels, posing with European leaders as they sought Gulf energy, capital, and support in isolating Russia. Back in Riyadh, he told Arab and Islamic leaders that Saudi Arabia rejected what he called Israeli genocide in Gaza, urging a unified response. It was another step in his transformation from risk-taking prince to regional statesman, at least in his own telling.
تجدد المملكة ديانتها ورفضها القاطع للإبادة الجماعية التي ترتكبها إسرائيل بحق الشعب الفلسطيني الشقيق، وراح ضحاياها أكثر من 150 ألف من الشهداء والمصابين والمفقودين، معظمهم من النساء والأطفال. ونؤكد أن استمرار إسرائيل في جرائمها بحق الأبرياء والإمعان في انتهاك قدسية المسجد الأقصى المبارك والانتقاص من الدور المحوري للسلطة الوطنية الفلسطينية على كل الأراضي الفلسطينية من شأنها تقويض جهود الهادفة لحصول الشعب الفلسطيني على حقوقه المشروعة وإحلال السلام في المنطقة.
In 2025, the diplomatic carousel kept turning. Lebanon's new president, Ukraine's Zelensky, and India's Narendra Modi all visited the kingdom, deepening ties that span defense, reconstruction, energy, and AI, what one analyst called the oil of the 21st century. Then came the return of Donald Trump to the White House, and a familiar warmth in Riyadh. Mohammed bin Salman welcomed him with ceremony and talks focused heavily on trade and investment. The relationship, once strained over Khashoggi, shifted back to a transactional embrace. Hundreds of billions in Saudi investment pledges, talk of a defense pact, and shared interest in technology and artificial intelligence. At a UTSAT Gulf summit, the Crown Prince praised Trump's decision to lift sanctions on Syria and spoke of working together to de-escalate tensions, end the war in Gaza, and find a permanent solution to the Palestinian question.
ود نشيد بالقرار الذي اتخذه فخامة الرئيس دونالد ترامب بالأمس بإزالة العقوبات عن الجمهورية العربية السورية الشقيقة، مما سوف يرفع معاناة الشعب السوري الشقيق ويفتح صفحة جديدة نحو النمو والازدهار. العربية السورية وحدة أراضيها
دعم الجهود التي تبذلها الحكومة ونسعى معكم فخامة الرئيس وبالتعاون مع أشقائنا في دول مجلس التعاون الخليجي لوقف التصعيد في المنطقة وإنهاء الحرب في غزة وإيجاد حل دائم وشامل للقضية الفلسطينية وفقا لمبادرة السلام العربية والقرارات الدولية ذات الصلة.
Alongside Trump, he even hosted Syria's Islamist-led government in exile, underscoring how quickly Washington's red lines can move when interests align. And in Riyadh's Shura Council, the prince condemned Israel's attacks, including a strike on Doha, and pledged unlimited support to Qatar, signaling a new phase of Gulf solidarity against what he called Israeli aggression.
ونحن نرفض وندين اعتداءات السلطة الاحتلال الإسرائيلية في المنطقة وآخرها العدوان الغاشم على دولة قطر الشقيقة الذي يتطلب تحركا عربيا وإسلاميا ودوليا لمواجهة هذا العدوان واتخاذ إجراءات دولية لإيقاف سلطة الاحتلال وردعها عن ممارساتها الإجرامية في زعزعة أمن المنطقة واستقرارها. سنكون مع دولة قطر الشقيقة في كل ما تتخذه من إجراءات بلا حد ونسخر كافة إمكانياتنا لذلك.
From defense pacts with Pakistan to massive investment deals with Washington, Mohammed bin Salman now moves on a geopolitical chessboard far bigger than the one he surveyed as a young defense minister. As he prepares for his first White House visit since Jamal Khashoggi's murder, he arrives not as a pariah, but as a partner many in Washington believe they cannot afford to ignore, a leader who has opened Saudi society, tightened his grip on power, and is determined to show that backing his audacious rule was worth the gamble.